quickly populated by militants. This is something inconceivable for all of us to believe. And then, after 4 years, suddenly the first noises start coming from the US. There are people in the Fatah, and we have a record of General Musharraf denying for another 2 years that there is nobody. This is untrue. Those who say it are enemies of the state. And then finally, one fine day when he's pressurized, he then makes a statement, yes, there are people in the Fatah and we have to deal with them. So this is the kind of relationship and this is the kind of nexus that we've had to deal with, is a US administration that has its own disadvantages and its own agenda, a military that is dependent on their money but also very suspicious of them, the US administration suspicious of our military and yet dependent on them, and in the middle are the Islamist forces that they are holding. And I can just tell you that when people talk to me about Pakistan and say, well, everybody is an extremist there, which is not true at all. Because when and before the operation of the military took place, there was a video that was played by one of the television channels of a girl being whipped in Fatah, in Sawat area where subsequently an operation took place. And there was such outrage amongst the people of Pakistan that how could this have been done? And why is anybody allowing this? And why does the government not do anything about it? And thereby, there was then an army operation that took place. But when army's operation takes place, the expectation is that nobody should see it, nobody should criticize it, nobody should monitor it. And many of us who work in human rights, who believe in human rights, have had to monitor it, have had to blow the whistle. And again, we are being blamed, well, you're friends of the Taliban. After we fought all our lives against Talibanization and tendencies like Talibanization, the idea and the tendency of authoritarianism is that if we want to do something, you have to give us a completely free hand. And then we will do exactly as we want, whether it is legal or illegal. I want to just come back and tell you that what are the kind, when you talk about Pakistan and we hear Talibanization, well, that is a generic term, Talibanization. But we have different Islamic militants there. Or I am told that in your language it's called fundamentalists. But you have Al-Qaeda, as you've all heard of it now, and we also have heard of it now. But their ideology, as I believe, having talked to experts there and through the press, is not to lay claim on Pakistan. But their ideology is to have Islamic brotherhood throughout the world. So they're as much my enemy as they are yours. They want to have political power throughout the world. Pakistan is too small for them. But they need a place where they can operate from. And that is why they have been able to get first Afghanistan and now Fatah for themselves. And if they get a bigger place than them, then the security concerns, my security concerns, should have been as grave as your security concerns. And then you have the Afghan Taliban, who want power in Afghanistan. And naturally, if they get back power in Afghanistan, they will host the Al-Qaeda there. And then there are Pakistani militants, those that will wage jihad across the border, those that are sectarian, those that are used by the military to intimidate local politicians, local civil society, and to threaten them, to kill them, so that their expressions remain confined. And why I am telling you this is that this is not a threat. Pakistan is not a threat only to you, it's a threat to itself as well. And I know that I have been around and I have heard debates about people talking about let's get out of Afghanistan, let's leave Pakistan to its own devices. There's a lot of anger that I hear against my country, but the doings of my country and not the doings of the people of that place. I would have said the doings of Pakistan were the doings of the people of Pakistan if the people of Pakistan had not resisted. But they did resist. This is a joint responsibility, a joint international responsibility, that both people in Pakistan and Afghanistan begin to live in peace. And I believe that if this joint responsibility is not carried out together with focus, without being nervous, we will probably have a wider and a deeper crisis in years to come. I believe that this crisis also has to be overcome not only through military operations, because they are the last resort. It means that the international community has to be very clear whether they want and they believe that terrorism gives rise. Once terrorism is there, it becomes worse and worse if the society does not have good governance and if a democratic process is not put in place. And you can see all the countries around the world where there has been a democratic process. The violence in those societies has somewhat been managed or undermined. I'm not saying that it never happens. I mean, there is the question of Northern Ireland. But because there was a democratic process, it was also dealt with eventually in a democratic way. But if there had been no democratic process in Great Britain, the war in Northern Ireland could have gone on, like the war in DRC, like the war in many other places. So I think that we need to support those processes which will lead these countries to democracy, which also means that dictators, whether they are civilians or otherwise, should not be dealt with kid gloves. I mean, you've seen what has happened in Afghanistan. For years, Karzai has been mollycoddled. For years, Karzai has been looked at as a great savior. And suddenly, we find out through the media that actually that great savior was not such a great savior, that there was corruption going on around. But this was something that was known in the region for the last 8 years. So the communication, the nitty-gritty of communication, is important to come through. And accountability to the taxpayers' money here of your own leadership is equally important. Therefore, responsible governance, also by civilian leaders, is important. And I believe that eventually we will swim or sink together, because Pakistan is a country, we are fully aware of that, and very anxious and very fearful of it, that we are a nuclear country, that we do have strong bases, we can provide havens, and we have strong infrastructure. So let us hope that all this remains into the hands of the people and into the hands of the civilian leadership, and not into the hands of those that are either unrepresented by the people or those that will usurp it from us through the battle of